right. Coming online live. Let me make sure we are in all the right places. And there we are on Facebook. Perfect. There we are on YouTube. And I'll give you guys just a minute to join in. Let me post this on my feed. There we are. Again, if you're watching this, drop a comment. Let me know you're here. And as always, be sure you're subscribed at jackwilkie.co. That's my website. All of these videos, audio from all of them goes up there. My articles, my latest on my books. I'm currently working on a book on Genesis, on the first 3 chapters of Genesis, actually, and how it holds all the answers to our major questions today. So, again, be sure you're subscribed. It's free. Jackwilkie.co is the address, and you'll get emails every time I do something new. So be sure you're on there. I see you've got a few of you already joining me here, so say hello in the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on that as we get into tonight's topic. If you've been following me on Facebook at all, I've talked about it a little bit on Twitter. I wrote about it on my website. A tweet a couple of days ago stirred up a lot of controversy about children's church, about parents taking their kids out or churches having something for the kids to do during worship time. And so I'm going to read that tweet. It was by a guy named Luke Simmons. Simmons says, visited a healthy church in another state today. While it was sweet to see some families worshiping together, I was grieved by how distracted parents were by their small children. In my view, everyone would have been better served by utilizing the kids' ministry. An interesting framing. He later said that grieved was a little bit of an overstatement, but he still thought it would have been a better idea if they had had a kids ministry. What's interesting is he starts off saying he visited a healthy church, but then wanted them to make this one big change to their church practice. Well, I wrote about that. I'll link the article in the description. It's up on my site. I just entitled Against Children's Church. I posted about it. I posted the article about it. Between the two, it's been over 200 comments back and forth. A lot of advocates in favor of it, a lot of people kind of in the middle, a lot of people where I am strongly against the idea of children's church. But as I read the comments, as I read the pushback, it occurred to me that this is a proxy battle. This is kind of on the surface, but it's showing underlying differences that we have with our view of the church. It's showing differences in our fundamental understanding of the church and of the family and of kids and things like that. And I think those things are more important to focus on. I think if we understand those things biblically, because for a lot of people, it's like, why is it a big deal? Some parents like it, some people don't. Some people send their kids to it, some people don't. Let everybody do what they want. Why does it mean more to me? Why are people on my side of it like, no, this is actually very detrimental? And some people are saying, well, how can it be detrimental? There's good things that come out of it. Well, let's talk about that. I think if you view the church and the family and children from this perspective, it can only be seen as detrimental. And so let's get into those, the major differences on that lead somebody to be very anti-children's church and lead them to be very pro-children's church. First of all, and this is a big point of mine I talk about a lot, worship isn't for visitors. The Sunday assembly is not for visitors. It is for the purpose of the gathered church, the Christians, to worship God together. So it's about God, and it's for us to worship God and present our worship and our praise before Him. That's what it's always been. Visitors are welcome. Visitors are that we can invite them. That's okay, but they need to know, hey, this isn't for you. We're here for God, and it's for the church to worship God, to take the Lord's Supper. And so the same with the sermon. I'm not a fan of targeting the sermon toward the visitor. That the entire thing is not about them, even though they are welcome to join and be part of it. And so one of the things that was said a lot is, well, people would come to our churches more if we had something for their kids, and this might be a deterrent if you don't have visitors. Well, if you don't have something for the kids, for the visitors to come and send their kids to, that might not work for them. I don't think that should be our first consideration in anything. I think our first consideration should be the biblical precedent, and as I have laid out, I think, and haven't gotten a lot of pushback on, there's not a biblical case for removing children from the worship. There's Jesus saying, let the little children come to me. There is Israel having all of everybody, it says, from the stranger and the women and the little children, everyone in the nation, everyone that was there in Joshua 8, come out for the reading of the law, every word that Moses commanded. So you've got precedent like that, but you don't have anywhere with this concept of we'll have a little thing for the kids over here. And so we don't come in and go, well, what would help the visitors? We say, well, no, what are we supposed to do before God? And we're here to worship Him and not do that. At the same time, that doesn't mean you just have to maximize the difficulty. Somebody had a post in all of this saying this is why the 45-minute sermon thing is not a great idea. And I agree. Like, it does not need to be a super long, drawn out thing just to show how serious and committed we are. And on top of that, instead of sending volunteers out to teach the kids in a different room, one of the things we need to work on the most is plugging in our older members, especially our older women. And this is a great way they can serve, where they can seek out those young families and say, "Hey, can I sit with you and just help with the kids? I know, I want you to be able to hear the sermon, and so let me help you out here, and maybe we can help manage the situation a little bit." That'd be great. That, especially in the case of a visitor, it would give them a friendly face, a name, somebody that they know. Just a, "Hey, let me just come and hang out and help you out here." So there's ways to do this that are not send the kids away. Our view of worship in itself should change, and the whole thing is part of it. And a lot of people are saying, well, we go to the Lord's Supper, then we dismiss them, and we finish the sermon and the rest of the thing. The whole thing is worship, so just doing it to the Lord's Supper is very arbitrary. But the kids need to be in there and learn to sit still through a sermon, learn and be trained that, hey, this is important. As I said in my article, it's very good for children to learn the same lesson we're learning. It's not about me all the time. It's not about what I find to be most entertaining. And so worship is part of that. It's not for the visitors. It's not for the kids. It is for the Christians to worship God. Kids are welcome. Visitors are welcome, but we're going to do it a specific way. And so it's a different view of church and worship, first of all. Second, it's a different view of family duty. Where does the Bible make elders responsible for the children of their members? You don't see that in there. Parents, you go back to Deuteronomy 6, of course, they're told to teach their children diligently in the morning and at night, when you go out of the house, when you lie down, all of those things that he adds there. You have, the Proverbs and train them up in the way they should go. You've got Ephesians 6, verse 4, fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but raise them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. There's not any injunction in there. You can look in the pastorals, as they're called, Timothy and Titus, where they're being taught how to teach the church. They're not given instructions for teaching the children. That's not something that's in there. Does that make it wrong for the church to teach children? No. But when it comes to, well, we've got to give them something and then do something for the parent, that's just not a biblical concept at all. Parents are to teach their kids these things. Parents are to have that time at home in the Bible with the kids, taking what they are learning and teaching it to the kids. And in all of this, I got a comment from, I believe it was Caleb Westbrook, and I'm sorry if I'm giving the credit to the wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was him. Great comment saying churches should be training parents to teach their kids the Bible at home. Like, when you come to the building, we will teach you the Bible, and we'll teach it to you in a way that you can teach it to your kids at home. I know of churches that give material to their parents, to the parents in the church, and say, here's some stuff for your family devotionals. We do a lot of that at Focus Press, trying to get people into family worship, because this is your job to teach your kids. This view of, well, the kids, they need to come to church and just learn as much as possible. They can learn the Bible lesson all week long. Learning to sit still and show reverence before God, that's something they can learn really well in that worship hour. The rest of it, lessons, coloring sheets, all that stuff, we can do that anytime. This is their one chance to learn in this way. And the family's duty, me as the father, when I bring my family to church, I'm not outsourcing that to the Bible class teacher, to the youth minister, to the elders, to the children's church advisors. That's just not a biblical concept at all. And so the idea that I come to church and I'm going to be served, and they come to church and they're going to be served, we've got this consumer Christianity problem. Everyone agrees with that, and yet all of these things set up consumerism. Hey, it's about you. We're going to make church easier for you. No, what are we there for? What are parents there for? What are kids there for? And that's the third thing I want to talk about is and maybe the biggest one in our, well, maybe not the biggest. The view of family duty and parents is a really big one, because with that, we've got this thing like, in baseball, when a pop fly goes up and three players stand there thinking the other one's going to catch it and it falls and hits the ground. I think that's one of the big reasons for our dropout rate. Between mom and dad, the public school teachers, the Bible class teachers, the youth ministers, everyone's thinking, okay, they've got my kid taken care of. They've got my kid trained or learning the Bible or whatever it is, and nobody's really doing it. No, nobody's making sure that happens. And so, parental duty, dad coming to church saying, "It is my job to teach these kids in the faith and make sure that they are where they need to be." That is a big reason why I'm not a fan of this. I can do what is done in children's church. I cannot recreate what is done during the worship hour. That's when I need to be teaching them, this isn't about you. Sit still, pay attention to God. And so that is the third thing, is that flows into that. Our cultural view of kids. I'm a big advocate of married couples should have kids. A lot of people think, well, that's a personal choice, and I've had that debate before. But the kids are very, very important, but also the kids are not all important. The irony in this discussion is I was back in March, I believe it was, a church had a post go viral saying, "We want your loud kids in church. Bring loud kids to church. We love loud kids in church." And I had a problem with that as well, because we don't need to choose between the kids are there and just running all over the place making noise, or the kids are sent away because they're a distraction. We need to raise expectations on kids and on parents with what they do with their kids, and if they need help, then we can help them with that, because hey, it's, we want to expect and raise the bar for them, and we're not doing that arbitrarily to hurt them or be holier than thou. We want them to meet that bar so we can help them with it. But having expectations, the old saying of kids are to be seen and not heard, the idea was when there are adult situations, kids can be in those situations without demanding attention, without needing an iPad in front of their face, without tugging on mom and dad's shirt every 2 minutes, without that kind of thing. But that has to be trained. They have to get exposure to the kinds of situations where that happens. They have to have mom and dad pull them aside and say, "It's not time for you to talk right now. It's time for you to sit still and be quiet, and then afterwards we can talk." They don't need everything to have a Paw Patrol or a Bluey sticker on it. They don't need everything to be catered to them and have a big old time. I went on family vacation a week ago. We were looking for restaurants. It was crazy to me how many of them don't even have a kids menu anymore. Like, that just used to be pretty standard. You go somewhere to eat, they got a kids menu. These places just didn't have a kids menu. On the other hand, there were dedicated kid places where there was just like kid stuff to do and kid themed stuff. There was a superhero themed restaurant for kids. That's all we know how to do. There's no such thing. You notice there's no family movies anymore. There's super dumbed down little kid movies, and there's adult movies that sometimes people let their kids watch. But the family movies that we grew up on in the 90s, they're not there anymore. Those don't exist anymore. And so, why don't they exist? Because we don't have this concept of things where kids are welcome, but it's not for them. Either it's for the kids, or they're not welcome at all. We don't want them there. That should not be that way. I've got kids. I take them with me just about everywhere I go. There's a couple of times where it's like, hey, it's mom and dad's date night out or whatever. But most of the time, they're going to be with me. That's okay. They're going to sit there. They're going to listen. They're going to be still and quiet. That's the goal that we're working towards with them. Yes, it's a challenge sometimes, but they need to know, as I said, not everything in life is going to have a Paw Patrol sticker on it or a Bluey logo or, be catered to 4-year-olds. That's okay. It's time for you to sit and be quiet. Well, our culture just doesn't know what to do with kids, so we're always giving them stimulation. And so you put them in a situation like this, and 25 minutes of being quiet and learning that seems impossible. People use this term feral kids. I've got these feral kids that is like, why? This is not a badger crawling over you for 25 minutes. Yes, they're going to be restless. Yes, they're going to want to talk. Yes, they're going to make some noise. Everyone understands that. It is reasonable to expect that over time, you're going to be able to train them. It's time to sit. It's time to be quiet. It's time to listen, or not even, they're not going to pay attention to the sermon and take notes at 2 years old, but it's not time for you to distract. It's reasonable to train them and have some reasonable things to occupy them. We're not just bringing their whole toy chest to church or whatever, but also when you take them out for discipline only, you take them out to say, hey, we're not making that noise in church. We're going back in there and you're going to stop doing that. Not taking them out and letting them run around the lobby or taking them to the training room where they get to play with toys. No, the training is we're going to go back in there and we're going to do that right. As I said in the article, it takes training the kids. Well, that's training the parents too. That takes me getting in the habit and realizing, okay, I might not get the most out of the sermon this week, but we're going to get there. We're going to make progress with the kid. That's what we're aiming for. But it is this concept of kids that they can be expected to do things. They can have things that are not just for them. They can show respect. And this is just something, again, as a society, we have totally lost. It's either all kid all the time, or we don't know what to do with them. We don't really want them around. When Jesus said, let the little children come to me, this idea of, well, we'll just send them over there, that's very strange to me. When you think about the church and all of us gathering to worship, kids need to be a part of the worship, even if they're not Christians. They need to see it happen. That's what Deuteronomy 6 talks about. When they ask you in time to come, why do we do these things? And literally every week, my 4-year-old sits on my lap through the Lord's Supper. He's a really active one, so I sit him on my lap and say, we're sitting here and not squirming around. And every week, he started asking me about it. Now I ask him, John, what's the bread for? He says, Jesus' skin. And then the cup. And I say, what is this for? He said, Jesus' blood. I said, that's right. When he died on the cross. Just a little whisper exchange. He knows what's going on. He's paying attention. He's learned, and he sits quietly through it now. This is really a cool thing to have that would not happen if he were sent away. So my point in all of this is it is a different view of kids. One of my biggest focuses here at Focus Press, ironically enough, or coincidentally enough, I guess I should say, has been the youth dropout rate. We lose over 50% of our kids. This rate has only gotten worse since we introduced age-segregated stuff, since we started sending kids away from mom and dad, because again, it becomes, if mom and dad think somebody else is doing it, mom and dad don't always plug in and do it as much as they should. Mom and dad think, well, the church has that handled. No, it's mom and dad's job, and it's the church's job to equip mom and dad. When Paul wrote the Ephesian letter, he wrote of what the parents are supposed to do. The church should equip them to do that, so they're ready to go do that, not take it over for them. And so it's this different view of the church, of what we expect of people, of parents, of kids, that is all aiming towards this goal of what is going to produce the most battle-ready Christian when this kid hits adulthood. And these kind of things matter. I had a couple of people basically telling me we shouldn't be talking about this. Number one, it's my podcast, it's my website. I talk about whatever I want to. And if you don't like it, you can wait for the next article. Number two, we talk about this because it's really, really important that we get it right. We're talking about youth souls on the line here and the best way of training them in the way of the Lord. And I think the best way to do that is not saying, you know what, all of those idiots before 1965, they didn't get it. We understand now. When these ministry experts figured out, these church growth experts and all this stuff, that we can send the kids out and mom and dad will pay more attention. I don't know. Are mom and dad holier than they used to be? Are we keeping more kids than we used to? Is the church more serious and heavenly minded than it used to be? I would say no on all counts. Therefore, why would we say, well, this is clearly the better way to go? I'm very much a big believer in G.K. Chesterton's fence, the idea of when you come to a fence, even if you don't know why it's there, don't tear it down until you do know why it was there. Because if you don't know why it's there, you might tear it down and make a mistake. Unless you know why it was put there, then you're not informed enough to decide if it should be removed because you don't know what the cost might be. With something like this, I don't think we weighed the cost of making this change, and I don't think we've done a good enough job of seeing, did this produce the desired results? You can say, well, I saw a kid that really learned a lot from that. Great. Would they have learned more if mom and dad had been taught to have family devotionals with them? I would say. In fact, we did a survey at Focus Press back in 2013 of people who left the church. All of them were in church. All of them were in Bible class. I mean, like the huge majority were regularly in church events and youth group activities. The overwhelming majority also said the Bible was not opened in their home. To me, you can say, well, man, the kid learned so much of that class. Okay, but would they have learned more if mom and dad were taking direct hands-on responsibility for this child's faithfulness? I would argue that. Somebody say, well, why can't we do both? Because you're starting to move down that road of the church will handle your kids for you, you've got you. I think of that old saying about if the government started teaching kids to walk, within a generation, there would be people who insist kids cannot learn to walk without government assistance, without government training classes. I think that's kind of where a lot of people have come on this. Well, Parents couldn't possibly grow in the faith. Parents couldn't possibly hear the sermon and get what they need out of it if their kids are there. I don't know. They always did before. We always made it happen somehow before. I think we can make it happen still. In fact, there's a lot of churches that still do make that happen today. And so the idea that we have to have this or that we're lesser for not having this, I would very much argue in the other direction. I think we need to have a purpose for our kids, have a purpose for our parents, have a purpose for what the church is doing during that worship hour, and that is reverence and praise and awe before God that little ones need to know. Out of the mouth of babes he is appointed to worship. Like, this is a biblical concept that from an early age they need to know God, they need to learn to respect and reverence and fear God and to be in awe of him, and they need to learn there are times where we're going to give him praise more than anything else. It's not about you going and not having to be quiet and having a good time and playing or whatever it is they're going to learn. It's okay to sit still for a while. So again, I think there are underlying differences, and I think these chalk up to big differences in the long run when it comes to that consumer Christianity problem, when it comes to what kids are looking for in the church, when it's always been catered to them their entire life growing up, and then suddenly, boom, 18 years old, you're supposed to be a part. I don't think that's the right way to look at it. And so there's a lot of different angles here. I got a chat I need to answer here before I get out of here. Tyler says, let me ask this to clarify. You're specifically talking about children's church during worship, correct? This is not talking about Bible class before worship. Tyler or Kelsey, sorry, whichever one of you it was that asked. Yes, this is about the leaving during the worship service. There's a case to be made about non-age segregated Bible classes. That one's even more controversial. That's not what I'm getting into here. That's a whole other thing, and so that one, I'll leave that for another day. This is one I feel very passionately about. A lot of people, I had comments, well, you making this a salvation issue? No, I'm not making it a salvation issue. I'm making it a good, better, best issue. I'm making it a let's consider our ways and what is the best way to produce the result we want. Because I think one of the things that happens with the people asking, why is this a big deal? Why does it matter? This family wants this family wants that. It's fine. There's a sometimes I feel like a lack of willingness to look at everything holistically, like as all the pieces of the puzzle have to fit together, that these things are interconnected. It's, well, let's make a decision about this, let's make a decision about that. No, everything has to go through the same filter because it's all part of the same thing. Well, maybe it's a little more convenient Sunday at 10 o'clock to send the kids over here. If that's a decision you're making isolated, I could see how you get there. If you're making the decision, I, as their dad, need to put them in the best position to know God and to walk with God and to be respectful and to know where their place is as they grow up and in the worship service and all those things I want them to know, and for this to be a non-negotiable part of their life, then that's an unthinkable decision of just sending them somewhere else. That is, it just does not compute in that paradigm at all. And I think I want everybody to think in that paradigm. You might think in that paradigm and still disagree with me on this, but I did notice it's a lot of the families who have chosen homeschooling, a lot of the big people with more kids, people with a lot of the big pro-children people are anti-children's church. That says a lot to me in itself. People who are very much locked in on kids matter, kids need to be trained when you rise up, when you lie down, like the Deuteronomy 6 thing, because it's all part of the same big puzzle. And so it's asking what is the best way to accomplish all of that and not what's the best way to get the most out of 10 o'clock on Sunday. I can miss a whole bunch of sermons if it's in the service of teaching my kids how to sit still, that worship is important, that this is what we in our family do, is come and worship God and show some respect. That's a trade-off I'm willing to make, even if it's difficult at times, even if it's a challenge that, even if there are some very frustrating Sundays. I certainly know I've been there, I've done that. My wife has been there and done that. At one point, there were 4 under 4 that she had to manage in the pew, and sometimes while I was up preaching. We certainly get the struggle, but it is worth it when you're looking toward that long-term goal is what are we about? In fact, just for Father's Day a couple weeks ago, I shared that Rockwell picture of the father and son, the father with the hymnal with his son singing in church. Like, this is it. This is how churches and are strengthened. This is how societies are saved, is dads taking their family to church with mom in tow, and everybody pulling in the same direction. And I really, really think we need to think about the idea of undermining that with these kinds of decisions. So I mentioned I was going to wrap a minute ago, got going a little bit more. Got a couple more comments. Spencer says, I appreciate the good, better, best mindset here. We just want to do what's best and have a conversation about what that looks like. I'm a big advocate of the big, better, good, better, best thing. I think a lot of people reduce things down to, well, do I have to? Is it a sin? If it's not, I don't. Then we're not going to talk about it anymore. Striving to learn what is pleasing to the Lord is what the text says. That means some good, better, best. Hebrews talks about maturity is discerning good and evil, is knowing better and not having to have everything handed to you on a script, but that you sit down and think about, man, what is the best way to do this? That's spiritual maturity. And so, yes, the good, better, best is what we're looking at. Another one here, Tim says, I'm with you personally, but I think the parents can captain that ship. They are the primary means of the transmission of the gospel to their children. Teach them their responsibility, and then trust them to make good decisions. I agree. I think it's top down. Elders equip the parents, give them material to have at home, show them what it's like to train. We're just not hands on enough with this stuff. And so I don't mean throw them back in the worship service and you're just isolated on your own. No, like we think this is serious. We think this needs to be done. So let's help people get there. I think that's a good way to approach that as well. So I appreciate the comments. Appreciate everyone tuning in. We've had a good number tonight, and always good to see people joining on the live stream. And again, I've been trying to do this. I'm going to keep trying to, or try to keep it going on Tuesday nights, Lord willing. Lots to talk about. The rise of socialism is one I've been looking at, so that might be next week's stream. And the appeal to young people. And yeah, but if you have a request for a stream, be sure to drop a comment or shoot a message my way. As always, I mentioned subscribe free, jackwilkie.co, not .com. I'm still trying to make that work, but it's .co right now. And the Hear, Believe, Repent, Confess, and Be Baptized shirt is available as well. You can see that on the site. And, of course, I've been saying it a lot, but I'm going to say it again. You Are Saved is a free download on the site. Pick up my latest book on Christian assurance of salvation. So thanks to everybody who has joined. Appreciate you guys coming on for the live stream, and I'll talk to you on the next one.